What's up, y'all? What's happening? I'm so excited. We got a special edition of Marcus Ask. We're going to be joining my boy Tony Lewis when he hops on in a second. So I'm super excited about that. I hope that you guys are going to join and not only just like be a part and listen in, but I really hope that you'll also join in and ask questions. I want to be able to make sure that you guys have the opportunity to be able to talk to Tony as we learn more about his experiences as growing up as with a father that's in prison, as well as what it's like to advocate for a father that's in prison. So many of us are losing our mothers and our fathers to incarceration, and I'm so grateful that Tony has agreed to join us to talk specifically about that. So I'll give Tony a few more minutes to join in. Don't forget, please make sure you comment, join in. I want you to really be like, open this up, right? This is important to be able to have conversations that are led by yes, while we think about what it looks like to overcome incarceration. And specifically, as we think about celebrating Father's Day, I think these kinds of conversations are important. And again, like I always say, right, too many times, you see these panels, or these conversations that are led, by people that are not directly impacted by incarceration. And so we're blessed to be able to have the amazing Tony, to be able to join us. In fact, I think Tony's joining now, so I'm about to let him in, and then, we're going to definitely see here.
There he is.
What's up, bro?
What's up, man?
How you doing?
You keep the mayoral look on.
Hey, listen, man, that's crazy because I literally just left an event with the mayor, right? So I had to put a suit on today, man. First time I put a suit on probably last week, but this is the second time I put a suit on in 16 months, man. So.
Oh man, we all in this space where everybody's walking. I've always got a t-shirt and some Jordans on. I don't never wear, very seldom I would say I wear shoes, but I'm always excited, man.
Yeah, them Jordans that nobody else has. Yeah, the fear gods. Anyway, but you're right.
Everybody that knows me knows, me. I'm a sneakerhead. I always get in trouble with my wife when she come on. I be trying to hide boxes, be like, yo, like. You got another box coming in, but now, hey, look, man, thank you again for joining us, man, for the conversation, bro. Like, what I will do, because I think this is a very special edition of Marcus Ask, y'all. Like, so please make sure you jump in the comments. Tony's gonna be looking in the comments. I'll look in the comments, and I'll try as best I can to be able to ask Tony the questions that are pertinent to you guys. Really quickly, I just want to. What I don't do is I don't read bios. I don't do all that kind of stuff. I like to just have a very authentic and genuine conversation. For you guys that are joining us from around the country, some of you guys are in other countries. But here locally in Washington D.C., I'm right now. I'm in the Navy Yard in Southeast D.C. Tony is one of the DC natives here. He can talk about the whole movement to help not only talk, with his dad, but he can talk about how it was important for him to band with the community to create a voice inside of a community that has been gentrifying. It just looks different than the neighborhood, the DC that I grew up in. And Tony's been fighting to not only be an advocate for people like me who still are in this area, who look like us, but also talking about, how he goes to, I've been seeing Tony at the White House while we talk about trying to find clemency for folks who deserve to come home. So really quickly, I met Tony in person a few years ago, but I had heard about him and the legacy that he is starting to continue to build over the years. He's a living legend here in DC. We all want him to run for mayor because we believe that. See me, Tom, I'm telling you on it, right? We all believe that he is one of the leaders who not only understands the community in a very interesting way, but he talks to the issues that we have, and he's able to connect the people who listen to us and or typically historically have not listened to us in a very interesting way as well. So. Tony, you can talk a little bit about yourself. You can introduce yourself and the work that you do here in DC. But to be honest, if I'm keeping it a buck, and what I do want you to introduce yourself, if I'm keeping it a buck, what I really want to do is I want to like dive straight in and talk about all the things that we agreed to talk about, like the Free Tony Lewis campaign. I want to talk about policing here in DC. how we're being thoughtful about keeping people out of prisons. And I also want to get personal, right? Like you have two amazingly beautiful little girls. You have you have an awesome family. I mean, your wife is super supportive of you and the journey. And I want to talk about what it looks like to have a dad that's in prison and how in the world you didn't go to prison.
Yeah.
I grew up in an area where it was like and we talked about this before, when folks were aspiring to be like somebody, to be honest, we kind of sort of wanted to be like your dad.
Yeah.
So
Sure.
I'm gonna stop right there. Tony, if you take a minute to introduce yourself and tell us, who you are and how you want to drive this conversation in this version of Marcus X.
All right. First of all, I'm gonna start off with a proud friend of Marcus Bullock. Author, advocate, activist, public servant, right? Servant leader, somebody who just tries to help out, his people. And one of the things I appreciate what you said, because often I just try to be a bridge between, populations that seem to be distant, right? A solution-based, solution-driven sort of person. And so thank you for having me, man. We can jump right in, bro. And again, I'm extremely, obviously, this goes without saying, but extremely proud of you, inspired by you, the conversations we've had. And particularly how and not everybody when they're in rooms where other people aren't, do they mention other people's names, bro? And that's a measure of your character and something that I truly admire and appreciate about you.
Nah, thank you so much, man. I appreciate you, man. I appreciate you.
Sure.
So look, I learned a lot of my leadership from watching people like you, like Silas, like Angel. Like, I mean, you guys are amazing leaders, and I'm grateful that I have role models that I can look on, whether it be a social or sometimes in real life. Like, I mean, I watch you convene people and get people together in a way that is like, it's just incredible. But first, before I go in, because I think it's so massively important, so many of us we band together over the last election, and we were very thoughtful about who we wanted to be able to bring into office and how we believed in and some of us, most of us even continue to believe inside of this administration that is being thoughtful about lending its voice to justice reform. You've been very vocal, and I mean, I'm talking about, you have sacrificed a lot of your life and your own privilege to be able to advocate for your own dad who was incarcerated. This is a special edition to talk about fatherhood. So can you kind of sort of just at least just start off by telling us, who is Tony Lewis Sr. and what is the Free Tony Lewis campaign?
Yeah, my father, Tony Lewis Sr., is at this point 58-year-old man approaching 59 years old, who's been in prison for the last 32 years for a nonviolent drug offense, his first offense. He's a doting, loving father, somebody who was very responsible for me not following in his footsteps. And at this point now, a soft as ice cream in the summertime granddad, right? Everything is about my daughters and him. He's completely, just focused on them, and he loved them so much. And the Free Tony Lewis movement obviously is to bring him home. Felt like his debt has been paid. Nobody else on his case is still serving time. 29-person conspiracy. He's the only person still serving time on that conspiracy. Again, he's been a model inmate, and I don't say that just because that's my dad. We have Bureau of Prisons progress reports to support that. He's been a leader in prison. He's been a violence interrupter in prison. He's been somebody that the administration has leaned on to bring peace. He's been a mentor. We've done a lot of collaborative, restorative, and redemptive acts to actually increase public safety here in DC, to help build up the community, to help connect men returning to the community, the resources and supports around, training, education, employment, housing. So he's a guy who he's totally, I'm not gonna say he's totally different, because he wasn't, when he went to prison, right? He had some amazing qualities, right? But he made some bad decisions. He's paid his debt for those decisions. He's done things to make amends. And he's a man that's grown in so many different ways, and somebody who really is at this point just longing to get back to his family. Personally, my greatest fear is that my father will die in prison, right? Many of the characteristics and attributes that people applaud me for, I'm a direct reflection of him. You know what I'm saying? My concern about humanity, right? my character, my values. A lot of that is directly from him. And I'm an apple off his tree, right? And again, at this point, 32 years in prison, right? My father went to jail April 15th, 1989, and never came home. And I think about that in the context of me. I was 9 then, I'm 41. And I'll end here, Marcus. This is a true story, but this happened 2 days ago, out of the blue. Sophie asked me that question. That's why I alluded to my father dying in prison, because she asked me, like, Daddy, was Pop just gonna be an old man, become an old man and die in jail? She's 4.
Come on, man.
Like, what I do with that, bro? Like, what do I, you know what I mean? And so that level of trauma, right? How that felt for me, like, and it's like, I didn't even know, and I told her, like, nah, he's not we're gonna get him out. Daddy's doing everything that he can to bring Pop home. But now my 4-year-old has to grapple with that, right? I don't even know where that came from. She's never
Tough.
said anything like that to me before. You know what I mean?
That's tough. That's tough.
Man, for sure.
That's tough. One of the things I think that a lot of our audience can identify with is like the children. Like, I couldn't even imagine that, bro. Like, you know what I mean? Like, and I see the relationship that you have with your daughters. I mean, you're very, very transparent with a lot of your life. And while, assumptively, you keep the very important private things private, but you are public with a lot of things in your life, right? And I mean, you gloss over your accomplishments, but like, when you say you're an apple from off the tree, and it shows, if you are any reflection of who your dad is, right, then that must mean your dad must be a dope human being. And so I'm grateful for you pinpointing that. And I'm also grateful that thank you again for talking about Sophie and bringing her into the conversation and what that means for you and what that must be like to have to answer that question about your dad, especially since you was 9 years old. But here's my question to you, right? There are people in the space who would ask the question, like, straight up, if there was an opportunity to get your dad home, short of like having, some celebrity to advocate for your dad, what is the real process that it would take for your father to come home? Because he has a life sentence, right?
He has life without parole. So it's two things that can happen. One, the president of the United States could commute his sentence, right? What we know sometimes as a clemency, right? Or a pardon. It probably wouldn't be a pardon, it'd be a commutation, right? So the president of the United States has the power to do that. And this president, obviously, as a senator, in the 86 crime bill, which created a lot of mandatory minimums, and then obviously the subsequent 94 crime bill, we know what that did. But the 86 crime bill, right, without those mandatory minimums, my father probably may not have life without parole, right? So as you mentioned about the movement for this administration, I think is a lot of more responsibility to right these wrongs than any other president, right? Because of the role that the president had. The other things through the courts, right? So right now, May 10th, we filed a 782 motion, which is it was a reform called the drugs minus 2, right? That in the federal system you get a certain point tally, and that point tally, that total dictates what your sentence is. So if my father got that 2-point reduction, it would take him out of the life without parole bracket and put him more in like the 30-year range, right? And he served 32 years. So, that would pretty much cause immediate release, right? And then we have things like the First Step Act, but now the Supreme Court just ruled yesterday that's unconstitutional. But you have petition when he turns 60 years old, you got things like compassionate release, right? But that'll be another year. But the 2-point reduction in clemency, and I was happy to hear. I think it was maybe 3 weeks ago. New York Times put out a report that the Biden administration had went on record saying they're going to do a clemency program akin to the one Obama did, starting in 2022. And so in lieu of the Free Tony Lewis movement in the rally, where we were calling for not only his release, but that the creation of a clemency program, a comprehensive, robust clemency program. And then that happened. Not saying that was the thing that caused it, but that was one of our acts, and I was so happy and elated to hear that news. But it hasn't started. It starts in 2022. So with all that being said, that's like 3 different options. And I'm confident that one will come our way, and hopefully, though, the judge will rule in our favor. But so we don't have to wait till 2022.
Yeah, me too, young. Me too.
Yeah.
But one of the things I think is interesting that I hear you say all the time. I just heard you do it one more just now. Was you talk about not only your dad who should be eligible for some of these different options, but there are others who you like that are locked up who are in the this is the Fed because they're in the Feds. Let's be
They're in
very
the
clear.
Fed, right?
They're in the Feds that also that you are advocating for them to be able to come home. So it's not just your father. There's a bunch of fathers and mothers who you believe should be eligible for this thing.
Yeah, absolutely, without question. I mean, I think it's thousands of American families that need to be reunited, right? That was victims of the war on drugs. These draconian sentences that these various crime bills created, and I would also push to say that the process by which what had existed prior to, and I saw somebody in the comments it was talking about clemency. You're not being eligible for clemency if you have things in court. But the clemency program, that's on the normal like part and commutation stuff. But these programs that they setting up, that we want that to not to be the case. That anybody that was sentenced under a certain at a certain time under certain mandatory minimums should be eligible for reconsideration, but or should be eligible for clemency. And a lot of the reforms that happen, even the First Step Act, even this 2-point reduction thing, one of the things that I thought was interesting that they gave the judges full discretion, right? But these things were created to bring balance to the impact of mandatory minimum sentencing, right? Where judges had no discretion. So the thing to correct mandatory minimums, right, where judges had no discretion in giving out life, now the judge has the discretion to not take away life, right? Or to not free somebody, right? So I think that's problematic for me. And I think that we really need a system that's very streamlined. If you serve this amount of time, if your institutional record is such, if you got community support, these kind of things that they can create this profile, and that the gate should just be open. And because what the public has to understand, what the criminal justice system has to understand, from my perspective, is this is not get out of jail free. We're saying these people have been in jail too long. My father's been in jail 32 years. You got people that have done 2-3 decades, right? And again, I didn't get into this, but for people out there who don't know me, my career has been in helping men and women when they return, with all the stabilization factors from housing to employment and training. And in my office, I've sat across from people that have done, I don't even believe in like ranking crimes, right? Like what's worse,
Bruh,
right?
word,
right?
facts.
I believe in redemption. And so I've sat across from people that have been convicted of, you can the entire gamut. And so I often have to think, well, wow, how is selling drugs, not to marginalize the impact that had on the community or whatever, but how is selling cocaine sort of the apex crime, right? How does that mean you do that and you can never come home again?
That's crazy.
You know what I'm saying? Where I've seen everything that you could imagine get a chance to come home, right? And so, you know what I mean? So with that being said, specifically the conversation around clemency for people that are convicted of drug offenses in this country on a federal level, people have done enough time.
Yeah, nah. I'm grateful for you. So real quick, just because I need the sound bite, because I want to be able to make sure I can clip this and I can add it somewhere else, right? Like if we're talking to Joe, right? We're talking to Joe Biden, we're talking to VP Kamala Harris. Like, I need you to, can you tell me in 30 seconds, what do I say to them to help them understand the importance of value, specifically of why it's important to bring your father, and what that impact, what that means to you, your father home.
That my father.
I need that sound. I need it.
Okay. Yeah. That my father is a person who is remorseful, accountable for his actions. He served 32 years in prison. He's grown in that time. He spent that time not only rendering and raising me to be a pillar in the community, but to collaborate and help younger men return into the community, thrive, and not recidivate. He's been a proponent for public safety, and having him in the community will actually make DC a safer place. He can be an asset to the community. He has a community that's awaiting him. He has a family that's awaiting him. And together he and I can do amazing things, not only here in DC, but I feel like across the country.
Thank you so much, man. I mean, I can tell by just seeing the comments that are scrolling that you have a community of people that also believe, people that either know you or don't, that also believe that this should happen too. As you think about transitioning your dad, because I know I only got you for a few more minutes, right? So I want to get these kinds of questions out. I think it's important for all of our folks to be able to learn from you and learn from your experience and how you even think about this, especially because you work in this space. As you think about what it takes in order to be able to bring your dad home successfully, and anyone that's coming home out of prison, what are the ways that you are preparing for your dad to come home? What are some of the things that, when my boy comes home, when Ray comes home, I want to be able to know, like, very thoughtfully, like, what should I be doing to help him prepare for his release?
Yeah. First of all, just I think as somebody awaiting somebody, know that the same person that left you may not be returning, right? That when the joy wears off
Mm,
of reunification, that is going to be
wow.
work that needs to be done to relearn each other, to get used to each other, for that person to adapt back to freedom, have access or try to establish relationships with all the supports that that person may need, from behavioral health to housing to employment, to transportation, to education. In my case, those things are sort of laid out. But I think the bigger piece is to have a community. We got to work every day to have a community where people can be citizens, right? Full rights restoration, where people could be treated and shown the humanity that everybody else gets, shown. And I think that's imperative in shaping the hope and the willingness for people to, walk and embark on this arduous journey, right? But it's doable. And again, bro, not just because I'm here, this, but somebody like you is emblematic and is an example of, what that is. And it's no way that I should have, any more access to anything, right? Than you. It's no way that I should be able to volunteer at my kid's school and you got to go through a different process. There's no way I should be able to work somewhere that you can't work, right? And I think for everybody, not only on this call, but just in society in general, it doesn't make us safer to continue to put all
Mm,
these barriers in front of our people, right? It does not. It actually does the opposite. And so all I can hope for anybody returning or somebody awaiting somebody that's returning is to understand that again, when that person gets here, we're gonna celebrate and then we're gonna build and we're gonna start to grow and learn each other. And I feel like that's gonna be a beautiful process.
yeah.
And one of the things I think about a lot is just watching my dad, have an opportunity to see my dad just discover things again, right? Watch my daughters be able to
Yeah.
teach him shit. You know what I'm saying?
Yo,
Yeah,
that's
man.
gonna be crazy,
You
yo.
know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Yeah,
The
bro.
baby girls, they gonna teach them all of the
Yeah,
new stuff. I mean, they gonna have your
absolutely.
dad on TikTok and everything.
Right, exactly.
Yo, let me ask you specifically, like, how has this state, like, how, like, you talking about, like, your dad went in at 9 years old, so you went through I mean, pretty much the majority of your life without,
My
I mean,
life.
obviously the majority of life, but like almost your entire life without your dad here with you, right? But
Yeah.
yet you're so intentional about being an active father in your life and even a mentor to a lot of folks who don't have dads in their community, who need to have somebody they can dap up and keep it a buck, and they can keep it a buck with, and that's not going to judge them for the decisions that they made, good or bad, right?
Hmm.
How have you learned how to be a father without having a father around you to teach you how to be a father?
Yeah, but that first nine was like, incredible, right? The first nine, he was super, he was there. And that's what actually has sustained us, right? Because we had such a solid foundation, right?
Mm,
I parent like he parented, right? But obviously as I grew up, from 9 years old to him being able to, he did his best to parent me from prison, but that is incredibly difficult. But we always had that first 9 years as the foundation for whatever. Like he put me on punishment from prison, right?
yeah, yeah,
What's up with that report card? Like that's the kind of father that
yeah.
he was and he has been. So I'm grateful for that because a lot of my homies ain't had none of that. But then also I've just always learned from people around me, right? And I've always watched others and tried to emulate. And then I had I had uncles who were in out in jail, but when they were in the street, they were active fathers, right? And so I think I had again, these guys who the world would call bank robbers or gamblers or drug dealers or whatever, really set a great example for me. I'm a product of that. I'm not different. And sometimes I get described as being, the polar opposite of those guys. I'm actually not. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. So I think the risk they took or the sacrifices they made was so that I could be who I am. And I often try to pour into, younger dudes or people coming up behind us, sharing information, being a mentor or just being somebody, a soundboard or whatever the case, because it's that important to me. And trying to be an example. And obviously you transparent, your amazing children and all the wonderful things you doing with them, exposing them to, and that kind of stuff is people watching us, bro. And I'm obviously clear on that. And I think you or I could never understand just how much of an impact, that has, right? Outside of our success or what have you, our biggest success is our wives and our children, because a
Big
lot of times
facts.
where we come from, people don't see that. Like my parents weren't married, bro. That's a whole nother part of it too. And one of the things that my father called in one day, I was doing an interview, and the interviewer asked my dad, what was the thing he was the most proud of me for, right? And I'm thinking he gonna talk about me saving lives, getting people jobs, or all this. He was like, me being married and having a
Wow.
family. And I was like,
Yeah.
whoa, like what that, like, right? That's something he got married when he was in, but like he didn't create that for me. And I think he sees that as like, that's the thing that's the most like mind blowing, because in our neighborhood, really your manhood was on how tough you are and how many women you had. Right. And
Yeah.
so,
Talk about it.
right. So what we're doing is really we changing the paradigm in more ways than one. We teaching younger dudes that family is the most important thing. Having that nuclear family, having love and support, being active, being in your kids' lives, and even for the naysayers or people that think this, particularly around Black fathers, right, that think that that's not what we do, but that's what we do. And it's structural violence, in this country that plays a part in robbing us of that and taking us away from our families, right? But it's not like a lot of people think like we just make a choice not to be in our children's lives. And I think that can't be the furthest from the truth. That's not what I saw growing up, even in the midst of, the men in my life being involved in a subculture that, took them away. But they were family men. And if I'm a continuation of that, that's one of the things I'm incredibly proud of.
You drop it. I can't, you drop it, Jews. It's hard for me to digest it all because I got so many questions for you, yo. And it's interesting, right? Because you're talking about like your relationship with your father, and how he was like, to hear you talk about your father was putting you on punishment from inside. One, it just talks about the respect and the reverence that you have for your dad. Not even, it didn't matter where he was. No matter what the number, the number that was attached to his name at the time or where he was living, like on the phone or going. I mean, you post pictures all the time of you and going to go visit your dad for over all these decades, right? And then
Yep.
I'm watching you post pictures on your own timeline where you're sharing the experience of what it looks like to bring your children in there for them to be able to spend time with their granddad. I think one of the things it leans on the importance and value of staying connected to him in a very very intentional and demonstrable way. As you know, the basis behind what we do at Flikshop is we work to keep the families connected during incarceration, because we also believe like, you keep the family connected, you keep that nucleus going, like it is impactful for not only them inside there, but for you out here. And that's one of the things I'm hearing from you. I mean, what do you say to the people that have a dad, or forget it, it's a parent, right? This episode is about fatherhood, but like a person that has a parent that's in prison, how important is it to keep them woven into your daily life?
Yeah, it's incredibly important. And really, I think the sort of the sanctity or the sort of the foundation, the bonding of that relationship is really more apparent on the person in freedom, because the person inside is limited in what they can do, right? And I learned that early on in life. So sending my dad pictures, like again, back to what you do, bro, like that's so important. That's critical. Having people inside be able to be a part of what's going on outside, to be aware, to see what's happening, to see the changes, to live in those moments with their family members, their children, even though they can't be there, is incredible, right? And then, if I got the Flikshop app, I can do that right in the moment. Those things that brings that person out of those walls, out of those gates, however you want to look at it. That's part of also how we've been able to stay so bonded, right? for me to keep my dad present in the only way that I can, in letters. Well, now we got email, right? But throughout, back then but letters and pictures. And my dad first 13 years incarcerated, he was in California. So it wasn't like we was
That's
going, I couldn't
he
go
was
visit.
nowhere close to DC.
Nowhere close, 3,000 miles away. I went from being 9 or like 10 by the time they got sentenced to like from 10 to like 23. You know what I'm saying? He was
That's
in Lompoc,
crazy.
California. Yeah. So these in DC, for those out there who may not know, we don't have a local prison system, right? So everybody goes into the federal system, whether you break a local law or federal law. And so children in DC have that paradigm now every day. Your family member, your dad could be anywhere in the United States where there's a federal prison. And so with that, again, these kind of things are the most important things, man. Sending pictures and mail, and not only what it does for them, but like you said, Marcus, what it does for the person out here. And that's what allows those bonds to stay constant and stay, intact as much as possible. But prison, that relationship with somebody in prison, man, it can really chip away at the most sacred bonds. You know what I'm saying? Especially if it's this for a long time. And I wake up, come on, man. I wake up blessed just knowing that we still have the relationship that we have, by the grace of God. Because I like you said, I'm in this work, and I know how difficult it is to maintain those bonds. I'm talking about parental bonds, sibling bonds, spousal bond, all of that. It erodes because listen, bro, when I don't have to tell you that, but when you're away, you're not here, and for children, you need your parent. And then, a lot of kids deal with that resentment, right? And one of the things I think parents that's incarcerated got to understand, they must be accountable. Your intentions mean nothing. When you come home and your children may not, respond to you the way you think that they should. You're like, oh, daddy, I'm back. Like, yo, do you talk to them about what they went through? Apologize to them for not being there. That's so important because it's things that happened with them or went on with them that you have no clue. And a lot of them, like I used to call myself protecting my dad. Why? Because, I remember when I wrote the book, some things that he's like, you ain't never tell me that. Why, what could you do about it? I'm not even going to add stress to your life. You in there. You doing time. I know you can't do nothing about it anyway. I'm not even going to, worry you with this. Because guess what? I have to handle this. I'm out here. I got to handle this. So I think there's a lot of kids that take that approach. Like, I'm not even going to share that with you because I don't even want you to be worried about that. And at the end of the day, you can't do a thing about it. I have to deal with this. And so all of those things are sort of mixed in the pot when you're dealing with that parental incarceration piece. But those pictures and those letters are the most important thing, bro. And trying to, help that. Obviously, visits are the most important. But when people are far away, and even in some states, right? California, Texas, you could be a day away, right? You could be literally, you know what I'm saying? So yeah, man.
So look, we over our time. I got one more question that I want to ask you before I let you go. But before I let you go, before I even ask, as a matter of fact, I'll ask you a question because you started to. I'm asking you a question, but before you answer it, I want to talk about some other work that you're doing. But to prepare you for that question, you began to talk to the dads that are incarcerated. You talked about things that they need to do. Like, I've never heard anybody do this before, Tony. And I finally had this question ready. But listening to you, like you talk about, like, yo, apologizing to your children, like listening to your children, thinking of all that kind of thing. All right, I want to ask you specifically, what do you say to the incarcerated dad that's in there, especially as we move to a Father's Day? Because I still celebrate all of you dads that are incarcerated now. You still a dad, and I'm grateful, that you guys are still just living and you have the opportunity to be able to be in your child's life, whether it's today, tomorrow, next week, and we're praying for you to be able to have a safe return back to your community. But before Tony asks the question about so he can talk to those dads really quickly, do all of our audience, do yourself a favor, take an opportunity and literally Google Tony Lewis Jr. You'll see a bunch of content that not only where he talks about the work that the work that he's doing to help get his dad free, but the work that he literally is doing every single solitary day for people and families that literally like mine, that are either one, trying to figure out how to deal with incarceration, how to work within the reentry process and working through what it looks like to come home from prison and like going back to your neighborhood that may look different. Going back to your neighborhood, you got to stay home with your grandmother, and now you can't be, somebody hot doing something crazy, bringing it to your grandmother's doorstep after you come home. Like there's a responsibility that you have, and there's some accountability that's baked into it. Tony talks most recently about like what it looks like in order to be able to even receive addiction treatment to drugs while you're making decisions as somebody that lives in the neighborhood, and the first decision you make is being led with violence and how to be able to attack that. Tony talks about maintaining your mental health while you're going through and living in an environment that's filled with trauma, like the neighborhoods I grew up in and the neighborhoods that Tony still lives in today. Tony even wrote a book called Slug that he was very, very transparent about his dad, his journey with following his dad. And then he took the extra step to build a learning manual that he takes back into facilities that allows you to be able to dissect the stories that he's telling and how he got to be this amazing person that he is today. I'm super, super, super grateful to be able to have this conversation with you, Tony, and every conversation that we have, whether it was in Aspen where we were toasting up at the bar, or you know what I mean, like whether or not I'm listening to you with a bullhorn in your hand, advocating for not only your father, but for all of the mothers and the fathers that deserve the clemency and need to come home, especially after serving decades in prison. What you want him to do? I mean, what more do you want from him now,
Exactly.
right?
Exactly.
I mean, seriously, real talk. What you want? What more do you want from him? All right, I'm gonna get off my soapbox. I am a Tony Lewis Jr. fan, if you guys can't tell. And for real, it's not because like this is a dope man, he's doing all these amazing things, but he literally puts in the work and he's earned that right. And so, dude, I'm 100% always gonna make sure I give you your flowers while you're still alive. We can just scroll through all of the people on his timeline who will also want to give you your flowers while you're still alive. And I'm so grateful for you for taking this time to chop it up with us, especially with this audience. I'm going to let you give out the closing words as we close out, man. Like, let's talk to those dads real quick. As we celebrate Father's Day, what do we say? What's the one core message that we give to incarcerated fathers?
Happy Father's Day, first of all. Let your children drive every decision that you make, even while you're in there, everything in your quest to get better and improve, so that when you return to them, you'll never leave them, right? And when you get back to them, just know that, if they're not responding the way that you want, right? That you have to keep trying. Don't quit. Keep at it. Again, be accountable for your role in their life, what has happened in their life, and never give up on them though. And just they're following you. When you get out here, be ready to set the example for them. You know what I mean? And they need you. That's the main thing I want to leave. They need you, and more importantly, or as importantly, as a community, we need you, and we'll be here to support you when you touch down.
No question. Hey, Tony, thank you again, man, for joining us for our second episode of Marcus Ask. Yo, happy Father's Day, early Father's Day to you.
Happy Father's Day to you too, bro. For
yeah,
real.
man, I appreciate it, man. I love you, bro. Hey, thank
bro.
you again, you guys, for jumping in and even jumping in the chat, in the comment section. Thank you guys so much for joining in this conversation. I think I can speak for Tony. I can say this was a dope convo in a short amount of time. We went a little bit over, so thank you. Shout out for you guys for hanging out with us. And you guys found it, that hopefully you found it valuable in your own lives. Join us again for another version of episode of Marcus Asks. If you think that there are questions that you wanted to ask Tony that we couldn't get to today, please make sure you follow him at Mr. Tony Lewis Jr. Jump in his DMs. He got a lot of them. He gonna answer them. Maybe he won't, but it's a good shot. Shoot your shot and see if he's able to answer some of your questions. Thank you again, Tony, man. Talk to you soon, bro.
Thank you, bro. Free Tony
All
Lewis.
right, my man. Free Tony Lewis.